Hey beautifuls, new video today talking about how to ask for a raise. And recently I've actually had a few friends of mine come to me and ask me for advice on this exact topic. These are real life friends of mine. A number of them have been asking me how to do this, and part of the reason why they ask me this is because they've seen me do these types of things. I think I tend to, having run my own business at this point and having transitioned back into being a full-time employee, I tend to think of things from both sides, both my personal side and from the business itself. And I just know what angles to play and what things to say and what things not to say when asking for a raise. So I just figured I'd put it all together in one video, and I came up with 8 really strong tips that I hope will get you to a place where you feel more confident in asking for a raise and inspire some ideas on how to go about doing it. Now, a lot of you have really enjoyed the video that I made of what it's like making $150,000 a year in software sales. So I thought that this would be a good follow-up, but feel free to check that video out, as well as subscribe to this channel if you like this sort of topic, because that tells me that I should make more of this stuff. And hit the like button, that does the same as well. But the other thing I want you to do is in the comments, if you have specifics about your scenario, because these tips are helpful, but you still have to form them into your own approach. And if you have questions or follow-up questions on any of these points, just leave me a comment. I'll try to advise as best I can with the limited information I have within the comments. But yeah, I want to help sort of direct you all individually if I can. And with that, let's get into 8 tips for asking for a raise. Tip number 1 is go to your direct boss. This is for a question that I got, which is like, should I go to so-and-so or should I go to my boss or my manager? If it's a larger company, literally go to the person you report to. And if you skip over that person and you go to like a director or a VP, which may be the person who actually makes the decisions on who makes what or who gets what raises or who gets what, climbs the ladder and stuff. If you skip the person between the two, it can just put a bad taste in your manager's mouth, and it can make them feel like there's not enough trust there. But also, you're sort of missing the point, which is your manager is there to advocate for you. So building that relationship and letting them know what it is that you want is super important. So there's kind of 2 reasons why you definitely want to speak to your immediate manager. The exception is if you're at a small company, you may be able to just talk and only need to talk to the owner of the company, for example, or the person who's like literally signing the checks. If you're at a smaller company, you should know the dynamics there. Most of the time, go to the person who handles your day-to-day managing. Tip number 2, don't threaten to leave unless you have an offer in hand. So if you're asking for a raise, you should have some sort of number in your head. What sort of number do you need? And a lot of people go to like market value to get this number. What could I be making if I weren't here? And then they want to bring that number to the company and say, hey, look, you need to pay me this because this is my market value. Well, I have a follow-up tip that's going to help you feel a little bit better about doing this, but only play that card if you actually have gone through the interview process at one of these other competitive, not necessarily competitive, but other companies that are hiring in your role and have actually given you a formal, not verbal, formal offer. And that should give you a few days to negotiate with management within your existing company. This is not the approach I suggest taking unless you're really willing to leave. And you really do want to go to this other place, and it's coming down to the dollars and cents of it, what makes most sense. That's happened to me. I did have a position that that offered me substantially more, about $50,000 more than what I was making in my current role. And I told the company that I was working for, my manager, hey, this is the number. All other things being equal, and really not, I would prefer to stay in some cases. I prefer to stay, but we just have to get to this number. How can we make that happen? And you have to be prepared for the answer of you should take the job, take the new job. And I've got that answer and I've left. Don't bluff. I don't know how other people bluff on this, but some people do. I can't. And as soon as they call your bluff and say, that's fine, so go ahead and leave. And and then you don't, just you don't even want to do that. The next thing is to wrap this around a career planning meeting. So schedule with your manager a career planning meeting that's not just about getting a raise, and it's not just coming to the table with your hand out saying, more money, please. Instead, tell your boss, hey, I want to talk about career planning here. Let's get on the calendar in the next week or so. Take a look at their calendar, see when they're free. You might have to throw 15, 20 minutes on your calendar to discuss. That way they know it's coming. They're probably going to know that this is part of it. And it sort of like warms the conversation. And it also opens it up to the other elements of things that need to be talked about when giving a raise, which is your performance. Give them that sort of respect of giving them a heads up and giving them the time and the space to talk about this. Now, when it comes to actually talking to your manager, ask questions. Depending on how the conversation's going, ask them, how does someone go about getting a raise? Don't ask for a raise. Just say, how do you evaluate this? Tell me what your process is. You can also say, how has my performance been over the past year or however long it's been? Be curious with your manager rather than demanding. You're gonna have to train yourself on what questions you can ask and how you can inquire, but ask your manager essentially what their thoughts are. You can even say, what do you think of giving raises? It also helps them feel like part of this is their idea, the manager's idea to have an open conversation about this. Yes, you're not telling them up front exactly what you're after, but in the end, it'll help you actually get what you're after. All right, this next tip, a friend of mine actually did do this, and it took me 10 minutes to explain to her what the mistake was. Don't take no framed as a yes. Let me explain how this can work. So a friend of mine did ask for a raise and she felt like she got it. When I inquired a little bit deeper, I found out really she didn't get it. She heard yes and they described everything as a yes, but it was actually a no. And the way that they did this was they deferred it. They were like, you know what, you really do deserve this raise. Absolutely. Our year review is coming around in a quarter or two from now. We'll talk about it then. That sounds like a yes, but it's actually a no. And the reason why is because all they have to do is change a number in the payroll software. That's all they have to do. So why does it take 6 months to do that exactly? That's a no. When it comes to them trying to defer or hang the carrot in front of you, you just have to be very empirical about it. Ask these inquisitive questions. Well, why are we waiting until then? You may have to find, other ways to leverage, including the earlier tip of going and getting an offer from somewhere else. It has to go down that path. But ask questions like, is there a policy against doing a salary correction here? If you feel like you're underpaid, that is a correction. And then the other thing you can do is you can calculate the difference and say, hey, if you were to give me this raise in 6 months, versus now, that actually means that it's going to cost me $20,000. Do you realize that we're talking about sort of cutting that right now? That $20,000, like that means a lot to me. Why are we being so nonchalant about that? So you could do the cost calculation on it. There's ways for you to bring a little bit of urgency here. The other thing you can do is ask them, like, why is it not important to do this right now? Because it's important to me. Like, obviously, if I'm bringing this up, it's important to me. So it sounds like it's not that important to you. Is it not a priority to you? Again, it just lends yourself to more questions to ask. It's a tough conversation to have. I understand. I want you to understand that if you did get a no, that you got a no. That's the main point here. The next tip is to understand if your company is growing. If your company is stagnant, then asking for a raise can be a lot tougher. And I'll explain the reason why. If your company is growing, that means they're hiring talent. They're hiring new people. And retention is an important part of hiring. Meaning if you have people one person coming in, your company pays sometimes, if they're going through recruiting firms, they pay like 10% of the first year's salary to the recruiting firm. So it costs them a significant chunk of money to actually get people on board in the new company. And if they have one person coming in and one person going out, then that's a net zero for them in terms of hiring. And they still have to pay the recruiting firm. So essentially there's a pretty significant cost in terms of growing. And if your company is growing, then you really kind of have more leverage to say, I'd love to stay. This is my number. and giving them the option to keep you. The last tip is a company culture thing, and I'm just concerned that someone's going to go and ask for a raise and get fired. I know people are afraid of that. If your company culture is toxic, that's something you're going to have to play very carefully, and it's a very specific scenario for your company, so please apply these tips carefully. If your company culture is good, then you can have an open conversation here. Just be mindful of what the culture is and what might play well with your company that wouldn't play well with another, or vice versa. I know a lot of people feel like they're going to get fired for asking for a raise. If the company culture is decent to good, you should not get fired for asking for a raise. In fact, only the people who ask for raises are like the people who end up getting them for the most part. At least the non-standard annual sort of small percent raise that just happens automatically. Only people who actually go out of their way and tell their bosses, hey, this is what I am looking for, actually get it. Like, ask and you shall receive. The feeling and emotion that if I ask for a raise, I'm putting myself at risk for getting fired is entirely a personal emotion that's coming from the guilt of asking for a raise. Unless you're at a toxic company, that is not going to happen. At the end of the day, asking for a raise or wanting a raise or feeling like you're undervalued can lead to feelings of selfishness, feelings of greed. And I really encourage you to take a step away from all of that personal emotion and just look at it from the business sense, the dollars and cents of what it costs to keep you and what sort of earnings would you make if you left, and make a financial decision based on that, just like any other financial decisions that you're making in your life. With that, I wish you all the best of luck doing this. Hit the subscribe button, and if you want more videos like this, just let me know. Thank you all. See you later.